For a great cup of joe, there's one thing you should know. Your morning brew can also be playful. Buff Boy Brewing guys make the temperature rise, and you surely feel naughty when you swallow our coffee. If you want some real heat, give your mouth a fine treat. You will want some more, rest assured. Buff Boy Brewing, you can't get enough of.
It's time for The Scribble, your weekly fix of celebrity chats, bizarre stories in the news, and basic random chatter with best-selling author and syndicated radio host Jeremy Bradley. Make sure your seat is in the upright and locked position and your barf bag is securely in place. Here's Jeremy Bradley.
Thank you very much, Larson. Jeremy Bradley here. This is the Scribble Podcast. TheScribbleshow.com and on SoundCloud and iTunes. And follow along on Twitter at The Scribble Show, at The Scribble Show. Remember, back in the day, I still feel old school because I always tell people on our radio shows to email me. Email live at jbonair.com. And there's so many people that are just like, you know, I'll Facebook you, which I kind of find funny because it used to be, like, email is an actual thing, right? Facebook is a website. And so when people say they're going to Facebook you, they're going to website me. Like, I kind of find interesting how the language has changed so much. Or inbox me. Inbox me. Not message me. Inbox me. The language, it's going to hell. And I'm waiting for somebody who's all about grammar and to just chime in and criticize me. But I at least get most of it right. You know, the other day we were celebrating my mom's birthday and we were out for lunch. And my brothers and their wives were there, as were their children. And one of my nephews, he keeps saying how much instead of how many. So, you know, how much of... I can't even think of an example right now. Bottom line is he should be saying how many. And I recall on Father's Day yet, so about a month ago or so, I remember correcting him 2 or 3 times. Now, the crazy thing is that my brother and his wife are both teachers. So their 8-year-old son and his poor grammar, they're not correcting him. And I don't know if maybe they just weren't paying attention. It seems to be that's what happens, is they just don't really listen to him. They don't pay attention to him. But, you know, I feel weird about it because the language is going to hell. You know, I'll tell you a story in a little bit about how I was just totally ripped apart on Twitter the other day. But it's sad. I don't know if I want to blame social media, but I remember there was a girl that I went to high school with, or with whom I went to high school, there we are, that she didn't know the difference between there and there and there. And she graduated. And it's interesting because I would think that you shouldn't have passed elementary school grades without knowing those things. But in today's world, you can't hold back a child because that'll be devastating and tragic to their ego, that you have to keep passing them along through school. Even if they're falling behind, you just got to keep going. You're going to get washed up in the cycle of things, but can't hold you back. We got to keep you up with the kids your own age. So, yeah, it's interesting. It's very weird about how things are changing in society. Now, something that has drastically changed society is social media, as I say. I started a bit of a firestorm the other day on Twitter, and, you know, I kind of had a couple of death threats. Now, it's interesting. I'm fine with, like, Bieber and Kardashians getting death threats. No, I'm kidding. Nobody should. That was a joke. But certainly I had 2 sentences of an opinion that sparked a firestorm. And I'm going to read you my 2 sentences, and then tell you the fallout, and then give you some opinion as to why it happened and maybe why people are just a bunch of a-holes. I'll tell you about that right after this.
Isn't it crazy that you wait for payday, but before you know it, you're strapped for cash again? It's time to stop blowing your money and become a smart spender with the book, The Official Guide to Being an American Cheapskate, at cheapskatebook.com. Learn simple ways to cut costs at home every day and during special times of the year. Don't go broke at Christmas. Don't remortgage the house for a fancy vacation. The book is filled with tips to save you money throughout the year. Check out the best-selling book, The Official Guide to Being an American Cheapskate, at cheapskatebook.com or on Amazon and iTunes.
It's never too early to start thinking about your next holiday. Have you checked out Mexico recently? From tequila tasting, swimming with horses, to ziplining through the jungle and watching whales and dolphins in their natural habitat, Puerto Vallarta has it all. Visit mexico.jbonair.com to see all the fun PV has to offer. That's at mexico.jbonair.com for hundreds of photos, interviews, and videos from around the tourist hotspot. Check out mexico.jbonair.com for all the fun. That's mexico.jbonair.com.
Scribble Dribble brought to you by SpeakFreeWithJB.com.
Thank you.
Check out syndicated newspaper columnist Jeremy Bradley's rants and raves in his weekly news and entertainment columns.
Yay.
That's at SpeakFreeWithJB.com. Since he's paid to not shut up, God knows why. Once again, Jeremy Bradley.
Okay, so we all know the story about the sad shooting of the police officers in Dallas, and let me just say one thing. Yes, it's tragic that they're police officers, they were on the job, they were in the line of duty, and they were shot and killed. I get it. Anybody who's shot and killed because, I almost want to say wrong place at the wrong time, but they were at the right place because that's their job. It was just unfortunately the wrong time for them. But I'm not here to get into a big political debate about gun laws or racism or anything like that. So I want to tell you a story about what happened the night of the shooting in Dallas. Now, I'm not recapping the story because we know what happened, right? Multiple officers were ambushed, sniped, whatever you want to say, and they unfortunately died. Now, it's part of a bigger discussion that the United States is having about gun control and racism and intolerance and inequality. I mean, you name it, any sort of minority group, whether that be women, gays, an ethnic or racial group, everybody seems to be a victim these days. And so the night of that incident in Dallas, the Dallas Police Department tweeted a picture of a man and said that this is our suspect, please help us find him. That was their tweet. And so I decided, and basically the picture is of a man walking down the street. He's got a very large gun. Now, I'm not American, so I'm not a gun expert. I don't know the kind of gun that it is, but it's large enough that it's like strapped around his shoulder and he's carrying it that way, okay? So he's at what's called a peaceful protest. I'm going to put that in quotation marks because that seems to be how people were describing it. And it brings into question, why you're bringing that to something that's a peaceful protest about violence and people getting shot and killed. Again, just kind of makes you wonder. So, in response to that picture, I wrote 2 sentences that set off a firestorm. My sentences. That's quite the shout out for him. Looks like an upstanding member of the community. So, within about an hour or two, now this was late, I believe it was last Thursday night, within about an hour or two, 200, 250, 300 retweets and likes or shares or whatever it's called on Twitter. And that's fine. The majority of the people kind of agreeing with my statement. But then, it only took minutes for people to jump on the racism bandwagon. I'm going to repeat my statement or my tweet to you again. That's quite the shout out for him. Looks like an upstanding member of the community. So, over the course of that night and then through to the next morning, because you don't shut off Twitter, right? It's 24 hours. People are going to tweet and respond all hours of the day. I woke up to 4 death threat tweets and just lots of hatred. And I'm going to read you a couple of them right now. And now, keeping in mind that some of the death threateners were reported and I guess either taken off Twitter or those tweets were deleted. So I don't have those anymore, but I did do a bunch of screenshots. So just in response to my tweet, I'm going to read my tweet one more time, just because I get a kick out of it. That's quite the shout out for him. Looks like an upstanding member of the community. Here's one. You're a sniveling little rhymes with runt. You know that? Your is misspelled, so it's not Y-O-U'-R-E, meaning you are. It's your, Y-O-U-R. You're a sniveling, but that was spelled correctly. Little rhymes with runt. You know that. So I wrote back, totally, pays well too, plus get this, I know how to spell. Your is not you are. Then I get a reply, oh, like you're a effing loser who hops on the racial tension train first chance you get. Ole Trump 2016. Get the bleep out. So, again, I have said nothing about politics. I've said nothing about race. I've said nothing about any of that kind of stuff. But immediately, I'm racist. Immediately. It's jumped on that I'm racist. There's a couple other ones here. Let's see. I've got there goes, and there is misspelled again. This one is T-H-E-I-R. There goes the racist remark right there. You see the separation is real. You just to catch their wordplay early. Again. So it's funny that people that are flying off the handle, calling me racist, pointing fingers, calling me names, making accusations, but the irony being most of these people are misspelling their insults and everything. So to me, that lends you no credibility. To me, now you're just a rowdy fool who wants to be on the attack for no reason. So then somebody else chimes in, since he's legally carrying his weapon. Texas is an open and carry state. So he's an upstanding citizen because he's legally carrying his weapon. See, I'm Canadian, so we kind of look at these things as funny to a point, because it's just, you can't take away the guns. You know, our children are being killed, our police officers, our men and women, people are being killed, but don't take our guns. That's our right. That's our it's our constitutional right to have guns. So then here's somebody else. Any apologies, or do you stand by your statement? Again, he's carrying a gun that's strapped across his body to what's called a peaceful protest. A peaceful protest. Let's get to some of these other ones here. What about white people buying up and walking around with guns? You effing joking, right? So then I finally responded with, I haven't mentioned race once, but that seems to be what the Twitter lunatics keep bringing into the discussion. Again, my 2-sentence tweet said absolutely nothing about the color of the guy's skin, what racial background, anything like that. I didn't criticize the United States. I didn't criticize Texans. I didn't do anything. But right away, I'm a racist, bigot, whatever. So I chose not to necessarily chime into a lot of the people who, would make accusations, but simply whenever I would reply back and say, what did I say that was racist? Tell me exactly the words that I used that are racist. Strangely, ironically, coincidentally, whatever word you want to use, the people did not chime in. They did not reply with any quotation marks or anything that highlight exactly what I said that was racist. So it kind of makes you wonder then, are these people, as my neighbor texted me the other day, she's like, sometimes I wonder if they even know what they're mad at, or they're just mad for the sake of being mad. They're just outraged because that's just what they should be. And then I also go and say, it would be no different if all of a sudden we hear that one of the officers is gay. Right away it's homophobia instead of randomness, right? Initially, okay, officers are shot and killed. All right, it's against police. Okay, so let's take that out of the equation. And all of a sudden we hear that, well, the officer that was just killed is gay. Was he targeted because he's gay? No, he wasn't. He is just, again, a police officer or at the wrong place at the wrong time or whatever it is. But that's just the way society is now, is jumping on it and go, yeah, that's what it was. Yeah, it's a hate crime. He's a homophobe. He's gay. Yeah, okay, that's why this happened. And it seems like we're just so ready to quickly figure out who the victim is, right? Why everybody's a victim. And again, so my 2-sentence tweet, and people are jumping that I'm whatever. And so I to Americans, I'm racist. To Canadians, I'm just Canadian. I really am. Because again, it's a sad state of affairs when the president of the so-called leader of the free world has no power whatsoever to make a change. And I feel sorry for the presidents of the country, because year after year, term after term, election after election, it's always that something's got to be done, something's got to be done. Well, then do something about it. You can protest all you want. You can say that we're fed up, and then, you know what? Then storm your Capitol building and sit in and say, call all of your elected officials and say, you know what? Change the Constitution then. Change the rule that makes it okay. If you feel that strongly about it. But we know, North Americans, we know that's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. So I am not here to be a political activist and say, oh, the gun laws need to change, and this needs to change, and officers, and it's too much racism. You know what? Take a step back. 48 Hours last weekend did a special about it, and they recapped that it was 3 deadly days, 3 tragic days of gun violence and everything in the United States. And I said the 3 days can be solved in 3 simple words. Be like Canada. And that's all I said. And so it's, again, a sad state of affairs when all this stuff is going on, and you can say that it's politics, you can say that it's racism, you can say it's gun laws, it's intolerance, it's whatever. But bottom line is that I don't own a gun in Canada, nor do I know anybody who does. And if you feel that unsafe, I get that it's one thing. And by the way, people were tweeting me pictures of, and I'm going to use their words just because it's going to be racist if I say it, but people were tweeting me pictures. It was a white couple with these massive like machine guns in a restaurant, and the term was white trash hillbilly. Again, not my words. And people are then challenging me going, well, is this okay? Is this okay? The bottom line is that if you feel that you've got to take that to a restaurant, I think it's saying something about where you live then. I don't know that it's got anything to do with that I'm afforded this right to be able to do that. If I feel that I need to carry this, then I would think about moving, because I honestly don't know that it's worth living there. So one of the things is, again, these people had mentioned that, it's an open carry state, he's legally allowed to do that, whatever. And so I kind of challenged people and I said, but just because that's the law, does that make it okay? Like, just because they tell you that you can do it, I'm able to own farm animals and all these things. I don't jump and do it just because I'm allowed to. So the law doesn't make things okay. So then I decided to do some digging and find some really interesting and weird, bizarre laws. Now, again, I challenged some of these people. There's a law in Texas that it's illegal to sip your beer more than 3 consecutive times while standing. So does that make it right just because it's the law? Okay? So, and again, there's a whole bunch of other crazy laws everywhere. Every city, every town, even in Canada, has some very weird laws. So I'm going to repeat that one again. It's illegal to sip your beer more than 3 consecutive times while standing. In Albany, low-riding pants and skirts are technically illegal. 3 inches or more below your hips displaying underwear or skin is a $25 fine. In Cleveland, Ohio, it's forbidden for women to wear patent leather shoes. In Oklahoma, it's illegal to take a bite out of someone else's hamburger. In North Dakota, it's against the law to lie down and sleep while wearing footwear. In New Hampshire, it's illegal to tap your feet or bob your head in time with music in restaurants and cafes. In Florida, it's illegal to sing aloud in public while wearing a bathing suit. In Wyoming, it's illegal to take a picture of a rabbit between January and April unless you have a permit. So, these are some interesting laws across the United States that, again, you don't hear any protests about those ones, but does that mean because it's the law, it's the right, it's the gospel, it is the way of the world, that's how things should go? It's the law in Winnipeg, where I live, to have handrails on your stairs if you have so many steps and it goes up so high. It is the law. I got a letter from the city telling me that I'm going to face either 6 months in jail or a $1,000 fine if I don't install handrails. It's the law, though. It's the law. Do I agree with the law? But do I have to follow the law? Yes, okay? But it's just one of those situations where there's reasons for laws. And maybe back in the day, some of those were justified, like those ones I just read from the United States, but who knows? There's reasons for laws. So it's fascinating to, again, wake up on a Friday morning to 4 death threats and multiple, just hundreds of tweets. Let's take that aside for a second. So the actual incident, the actual news story aside, to now go to social media where just the rage and the hatred. And so it was very interesting. And the reason why I chimed in last Thursday, was just people reacting. It's so reactionary. It's so, you've got half of the people saying, I'm sick, this is disgusting, this needs to stop, this is so sad, this is tragic, this is blah, blah, blah. And then you've got the other ones who are jumping and enraged, just incensed with what happened and what's going on. And the two sides never seem to come together. They never really do. But it leads to debate, it leads to discussion. Is anything going to come of it? Probably not. And that's, again, really sad. So if it's the gun lobbyists or the NRA or, whoever, whatever the discussion is, but people are just so mad on Twitter or social media in general, I guess, not specifically just Twitter, that somebody can have an opinion and you just jump on that person and threaten them. You threaten them just because they express themselves. Now, that's an interesting contradiction, right? Because you've got freedom of speech and freedom of thought and all these things that are also laws in the United States. But for some reason, you're not allowed to speak your mind then. You're not allowed to have an opinion. You're not allowed to say that. But absolutely, you're allowed to have your gun, so that's okay. That's great. I don't know. Again, we as Canadians kind of look at it, and it's laughable to a point because I'm not saying the deaths. I'm not saying that at all. It's laughable because it seems like it's that change the law. You shouldn't have had this law in the first place, especially with the way the world's going. But if it's too far gone to change because your economy or whatever will be hit, I don't know. What's more important? So, yeah. But social media, definitely, to see how people just get so enraged and just so, it's this mob mentality. That's great. You can take to social media all you want. That's not going to change anything. So some of these people, I ended up chiming in and saying, it's your country crumbling, not mine. It doesn't, that you can attack me all you want. You can attack me all you want. But at the end of the day, I would say you need to put more energy and effort into fixing what's going on there. And like I said, protests, is that going to do it? Probably not. Talking to your senator, your whoever, your governor, probably not. Even if the president has to sit there and, sweat and wipe his forehead as he's doing these public addresses to the nation, if he's got no power, if the president has no power, what's going to change? And I find it interesting, too, because it seems like every couple of weeks, we just had the Orlando thing not too long, about a month ago or so, and every couple of weeks now, we're hearing that something is the blankest since 9/11, right? The deadliest shooting since 9/11. The worst terrorist attack since 9/11. And when is it, it's one thing after the next. They're not getting smaller. The incidents are not getting smaller. They're getting bigger and what seems to be more shocking. In today's world, I don't know that it's justified that we should be shocked by some of these things, just because I'm almost waking up in the morning now going and saying, all right, well, what's going to happen today? What sort of tragedy is there going to be in the world, in the United States, wherever? And I don't feel, last weekend I went to the cottage in rural Manitoba. Went to go visit my coworker, Bonnie Winters. You're going to hear that on this show shortly. And went out there middle of the night, and it was just quiet and peaceful. We didn't feel like we needed any firearms with us. And I said that the deadliest thing that happens in Canada is winter. Really. Now I'm not with my head in the sand. I do know that there have been shootings and there have been killings and murders, even of police officers in Canada. But what I don't see in Canada is, sure, there's racism. I will absolutely admit that there's racism in Canada. But there isn't the hatred. I have never walked down a street and seen somebody all of a sudden be told off because of their ethnicity, their race, their color of the skin, however you want to group them. I've never, ever seen that. I've been to a lot of places. You might have, like, the odd social media comment, or you might have people just sort of, making racist jokes one-on-one or with a group of people, but never has there been anything violently or physically out there on public streets that I've ever seen about racism when it comes to just the general public. There isn't that rage. It's almost maybe hidden racism or whispered racism. Does that make it okay? I'm not saying that. But at the same time, there isn't that aggression. There isn't that violence. If I lived in the States and if I was there during all of these tweets, or if these people were saying this to my face, I probably absolutely would have been scared. There was a sense of security that, hey, you know what? I tweeted this. I was in Canada. I'm okay. I'm okay. They're not going to come here and do anything to me because in this country I'm safe. So again, it's very interesting to watch this play out as an outsider. But I do feel for the people living in the United States, for all you Americans tuning into this. I don't know what the solution is, and quite frankly, I think every possible solution has already been pitched, or it's already been talked about in public forums and debates, and it's a sad state of affairs. It really is. So naturally, our thoughts and our prayers are with those, the police, the victims of the Dallas shooting, and any of these people. And I'm not saying that the guy who was, shot in his car while the girlfriend was live streaming, his life mattered. Any life matters. It's not a matter of a black life, a white life, a gay life. A life is a life, and it matters. So, it's sad. Like I just really don't even know how to. I don't know. I'm at a loss for words. At the same time, I'm also kind of sick of talking about it and hearing it. We're about almost 20 minutes into the show right now, and sure, I've spent all this time talking about it, but I don't know, you think about what we see on the news, even the primetime television shows. Dateline, almost every week, is a story about murder. There's an entertainment business that thrives on stories such as this. Last weekend, In an Instant, it's a show on ABC. Coincidentally, I think it was coincidental. I don't know that it was planned like that. But there was an episode of a guy who said, some cops are going to die tonight. And that's entertainment in the country. So if people are amazed and intrigued by that kind of entertainment, well then, when you're seeing it on TV, then it's not really a bad thing, because people are wanting to see that. You're entertained by that kind of a story. So maybe people aren't hard hit by it enough to see that it's a problem. Whether it's a television, whether it's a drama on TV, or it's happening outside your window, people are intrigued and entertained by the story. It's not wrong because you're watching it. You're giving in to the hype of, murder is fun to watch and see. So that just says something about society. I really do feel like that. So, again, what's the solution? I don't know. And I didn't pretend to say that I would know or even offer up a solution, but just some opinions that, I was kind of thrown into it, thinking that I was just kind of making a comment about somebody walking down a street. I, as a Canadian, never would have expected that I would have been jumped on as being a racist, because there was nothing that I said in that statement that was racist. So that's just the way people react to things these days. So I'm not sure that social media is necessarily a good thing. Like I said, come the weekend or when I'm not supposed to be watching entertainment news or any kind of thing that's happening, I'm almost avoiding it. I'm kind of living in a bit of a shell in my house because I'm just kind of sick with what's happening in the world, and I don't want to be a part of it. And it's more refreshing to just live in my own little bubble and do my own thing. Enjoy some time with the people that I have in my life, and just live that way. All right. So that's quite the monologue or soliloquy. No, it's a monologue that I've just gone on to. We're going to take a break. We'll have more right after this.
Who are the Kardashians feuding with now? What did that little thug Justin Bieber do this time? Who's getting hitched? And who's headed for Splitsville? Hear the latest celebrity news and gossip every day on Entertainment Wrap-Up. The good, the bad, the ugly, but mostly the ridiculously hilarious. It's all recapped in this daily segment at entertainmentwrapup.com. Have a laugh at the expense of the rich and famous when they take themselves way too seriously. It's 3 minutes of time-wasting fun at entertainmentwrapup.com. Check out Entertainment Wrap-Up at entertainmentwrapup.com. Brought to you by Speak Free Books.
We hear you chirping. Get scribbling. Tweet up the Scribble at The Scribble Show. Join the discussion with Jeremy Bradley. It's all going down right now on Twitter at The Scribble Show and at thescribbleshow.com.
That's right, on Twitter. Thank you very much, Larson. And live tweeting, by the way, The Bachelorette, Monday nights on ABC. Follow along on my own Twitter at SF, as in Speak Free Celeb Watch, SF Celeb Watch. And I know, as our producer Bonnie Winters tweets every week, that it's the most sarcastic. If you have no sense of humor, then don't follow along with my tweets. But I don't know that many people take The Bachelorette or The Bachelor seriously anymore, that anybody watches and hopes that they really do find love on the show. So I definitely do chime in, and I mean, I guess the term is slut shame, but again, at the same time, the people go on there know they're going to be criticized, and they're wanting their 15 minutes of fame anyway. I don't know that they're necessarily wanting love to begin with, but that's up for debate. Some people still, again, I think that you go on there as the Bachelor or Bachelorette, as the one who's, getting the choice to choose who you either propose to or are proposed by, and you just wonder if you're going to be on the next season of Dancing with the Stars. Like that, it seems to me that's where everybody goes after that, right? Then you start either your own reality show, you try to milk that 15, you'll write a book about your experience being on The Bachelor or Bachelorette, and I guess the reason why it keeps happening is that people are intrigued by it. Now, there's that sense, as I mentioned in that last rant about the entertainment value of things, we almost don't see people as human anymore, right? So it seems to be okay that we can criticize and lash out at these people and mock them and make fun of them because they're wanting to be a celebrity, and if it's no different than celebrities being mocked and attacked on social media or what have you, then it should be fair game. So again, all open to interpretation and discussion. I'm not saying that my opinion is right and yours is wrong, and I'm not going to threaten you with death because you disagree with me. That's, we're all entitled to our own opinions, and I thank you so much for the past 29 or so minutes listening to what I've had to say. It's always great hearing from you. Send me an email, live@jbonair.com, live, L-I-V-E, at jbonair.com. Again, current events, it's a day of hot topics, hopefully next week. Actually, we do have a celebrity guest joining us next week, and so lots more fun on the Scribble podcast at thescribbleshow.com and on SoundCloud and iTunes. Make sure you subscribe. We love hearing from you. I will talk to you next week. My name is Jeremy Bradley. This is The Scribble. Bye-bye, everybody.
Want more Scribble? Check out thescribbleshow.com for past shows, celebrity interviews, cheapskate tips, and more. That's at thescribbleshow.com and on Twitter at The Scribble Show. The Scribble is a speak-free media presentation.
If you want some real heat,